USA's Tuesday night fights. Lonnie Bradley versus Otis Grant, a world title bout. Undefeated in 25 fights, Lonnie Bradley, the WBO middleweight champion, making his 5th title defense. 28-1, Otis Grant, the #1 middleweight contender. In a rarity, the champ and #1 contender actually meet, both with superior talent. It's a pick'em title fight. They both have superb skills, ring smarts, quick hands, sharp punches. So how does one get the edge?
I think I'm going to go in there, take my time, and hope that he makes a couple of mistakes I can take advantage of. And I just got to see what he gives me and take advantage of what I can take advantage of early in the fight.
Well, he's probably going to do the same exact thing to you.
Well, it might be a boring fight.
Don't say that. And laugh about it.
He's just kidding, isn't he, Lonnie? Not a cat and mouse affair.
Nah, I won't let it become a cat and mouse type of fight. You know, like I said, I'm looking to take the initiative and be aggressive and fight.
And the crowd looking on here at the Aladdin championship fight. And the rule, standing 8 count not in effect. The 3 knockdown rule is in effect. You can be saved by the bell only in the final round, scoring on the 10-point must system. Now here's the champ and the blackboard. Sean?
This week's boxing blackboard is brought to you by Meineke Discount Muffler. World middleweight champion Lonnie Bradley's strengths. He's an all-around fighter with good offensive and defensive skills. Lonnie's well-groomed. He seems to say and do the right things. His weaknesses, he gets drawn into slugging. Not one of his best attributes, and he lacks experience against top fighters. That could backfire against the #1 contender Otis Grant. His strength, he doesn't waste punches or energy, and he has good experience against top competition. Grant's weaknesses, not finishing. Getting opponents hurt, he backs off. Down and out by light punchers, he has a suspect chin. Something Lonnie Bradley will certainly test tonight.
Ladies and gentlemen, Arthur Palulo's Banner Promotions in association with the Aladdin Hotel and Casino, Power Punch Promotions, and Budweiser, the undisputed, undefeated king of beers, This Bud's for You, presents main event, 12 rounds for the WBO Middleweight Championship of the World. Ring officials assigned by the World Boxing Organization, President Francisco Valcarcer, supervisor in attendance, Alice Richardson. Your judges at ringside are from Detroit, Michigan, Dale Grable, and from Las Vegas, Nevada, Chuck Giampa and Bill Graham. Your referee for this event, also hailing from Las Vegas and working his 138th championship fight, the incomparable Richard Steele. Introducing now the principals first in the red corner to my right, wearing the black trunks, weighing 160 pounds, with a professional record of 28 victories, 1 defeat, 16 wins by way of knockout. He hails from Montreal, Quebec, Canada, the 2-time NABF middleweight champion, ranked #1 in the world by the WBO, and challenger Otis Magic Grant. His opponent in the blue corner, wearing the maroon colored trunks with white trim. He also weighs in at 160 pounds. He is undefeated in 25 professional bouts, with 19 wins coming by way of knockout. He hails from New York City, New York, the WBO middleweight champion of the world, Mr. Lonnie Bradley. Bradley, 12 rounds, WBO middleweight championship at stake. Let's go. Let's go.
Okay, I spoke to both fighters in the dressing room, cautioning again of
obey my commands at all times. Shake hands and good luck.
And this is what a world championship fight should be. Two of the top fighters in the middleweight division, the champ and the #1 contender in the WBO, 28-year-old Lonnie Bradley. Complete package, speed, power, quickness, great reflexes, good defense, can punch with either hand, and very calm and patient, and has that even keel of a champion in the ring. And Otis Grant, you've seen him many times on USA, very sharp puncher in combinations, very economical in his style, very controlled pace. He was on his way to the WBC title fight when he had won his first 22 professional fights, when he was upset by Quincy Taylor, who went on to become the champion in a fight in which Grant was ahead on the cards going into the 12th round when he was caught by Taylor and knocked out. And since that time, Otis Grant very tentative when he came back in the next couple of fights, but he is back in form. His last 3 fights very dominating against Rodney Toney, James Hard Rock Green, and Derek James. So Otis Grant has returned to form. As you can see him, there is not much body fat there at 160 pounds on a 5'9" frame. Likewise for Lonnie Bradley, and very cautious early. This is what we anticipated, although Bradley says he planned to be the aggressor. He thinks he has faster hands. He thinks he's a stronger puncher. He thinks he's actually a better boxer than Otis Grant, and wants to take it to him. But Grant is a very smart guy in the ring. Minimizes his mistakes, exceedingly well schooled, and it may just turn into that cat and mouse fight that Lonnie Bradley said it wouldn't.
Yeah, two fighters who can adapt and know how important and vital it is to have two different styles in a ring. Lonnie Bradley describes himself as a boxer puncher. He says, I'm a thinker in the ring. I pick others apart, and he's been doing a good job of that here in this first round. But Otis Grant likes it when opponents advance. He describes his style as a boxer puncher. His best punch is the right hook. He writes with his right hand, but he plays sports left-handed, and you can see him in this fight standing in his left-handed stance. It is an awkward stance, that left-handed stance to face. It is like a baseball pitcher who throws with his left hand as opposed to his right hand. It is quite unusual. It throws you off. Lonnie Bradley has fought only one southpaw before, that Gary Smith back in 1993, and he knocked Gary out in the 5th.
That's just his 10th fight.
And the control will be set by that jab. Both fighters know how important that jab is, and Grant said that he was going to control the jab in this fight.
Both fighters right now worried about making the mistake. Both fundamentally sound, bright, savvy.
Whoa! Nice straight left from Otis Grant. He's got control. Good straight left from Otis Grant. Crack right on the bridge of the nose. Bradley a bit off balance, but it connected, and it was a good shot from Grant. He was granting them that straight left.
Grant may have won the round on the punch.
Yeah,
that was the difference in the round. One punch like that at the end. Bradley showing his tremendous balance in staying up. Well, Otis Grant says he will take his time, be very cautious early, and that has been the case, and hope that Bradley makes mistakes, which doesn't happen often.
These punches come at you from different angles. There was a good right hook from Grant. You're used to getting hit with a straight left jab, a right cross, and a left hook. Now all of a sudden you're fighting a southpaw. They hit you with a right jab, a left cross, and a right hook. Also, when they throw that hook, they throw it from an angle that you can be out of balance to catch that hook, to really roll with it. Attacks you kind of behind the head.
Lonnie Bradley, a star in the making, had played it safe, being brought along carefully. His last fight, though, against former world champion Simon Brown, who was coming off a great performance against Glenwood Brown, and Bradley with a unanimous decision in August. And now certainly his toughest fight off of that against Otis Grant. And Grant,
two banged heads.
Was he cut?
Two banged heads.
So.
There's not a cut, but he is wincing with that right eye. Oh, look, you can see it swelled up already.
See, both coming in from angles. Otis Grant, the southpaw. Lonnie Bradley with a low stance. And now time resumes.
Watch your head. Two fighters very respectful of their opponents.
Grant has been behind the 8 ball before and showed tremendous heart. You remember in a fight several years ago against Willie Monroe, his left eye was swollen shut in that one. By the 5th round, he had double vision, but he came back the last half of the fight and dominated Monroe with his great boxing skills and his mobility, and actually scored a near shutout in the fight. He also has come off the canvas in a fight against Bo James to turn that one around and win. So Otis Grant, when you talk about paying the dues, has certainly paid more than Lonnie Bradley has had to this point.
Yeah, and he says that's going to be the difference in this fight. He says, I've been in the fights where I've had to fight tough, not him. That James fight, he said, even though he went down in that fight, he said because of that I was off mentally. He said, whereas he wasn't in the fight, says that he learned in that match how to concentrate, how to get up for fights. Final seconds of the 2nd round. And Grant moving in, trying to close strong.
All right, let's go back to the Grant corner now. We'll see if Bradley now starts looking to pinpoint the eye of Otis Grant. This is Lonnie Bradley's first fight undergoing a major change in management, splitting with his longtime manager and a very colorful Dave Wolf, who has guided Lonnie throughout his pro career and has done a wonderful job. Both Lonnie and Dave not talking about the split, but I think, Sean, last time we have seen the two of them together, that Dave Wolf was one of the kinds of managers that didn't want Lonnie getting lost in the claws of some of the big promoters, and I think Lonnie may have thought he was going too slowly, wanted the big fights, he wanted the big matchups, he feels he's the best middleweight in the world, and knows that the time is right now to fight. A manager, of course, doesn't want to make too many of the compromises. This is not a new story. You had the same thing with your dad, who wanted to keep the full control and not get tied up with some of the other promoters.
Yeah, and I even asked Lonnie about that, and he said, you know, I really don't, I like Dave Wolf a lot, and he's done a lot for my career, but we both decided that it was best for us to part ways. And what that tells me is just what you're saying, that Lonnie Bradley thinks he is ready now. He's heard the stories, he's read the articles, he's listened to the people on the street who tell him he should be bigger, getting more money. But that's something else, that he comes into this fight and he drags that excess baggage with him. All of a sudden having management trouble outside the ring, management problems.
Well, there are several managers who also work a guy all the way up and have the control, don't want to sell the soul of the fighter. And it's tough. Sometimes you also don't get the fights you want.
It is a difficult business. Sometimes to get the fights, you have to sell your soul. There is the two of these fighters both leading with their front foot. And look how their front foot, watch how they step on one another. That'll be hard to look at. But their front feet, see how close they are? When you step in with your jab, you talk to shift that front foot forward. There's Bradley stepping on Otis Grant's front foot. Two of them really working. Not many clinches, but a lot of combinations from these two middleweights.
And this is round number 4 Lonnie Bradley, who won the title in May of '95, beating David Mendez. There's a vacant title. Mendez, pretty much a club fighter, with a record of 13-5. First defense against an untested Dario Galindez. Bradley knocked him out in the first. Second defense against light punching junior middleweight who was moving up, Randy Smith, and Bradley knocked him out in the second. Then in his third defense against Lonnie Beasley, very cagey fighter, but not known for his punching power, and also another junior middleweight who came up. And the fourth defense, Simon Brown, who is at the end of his career, but still flashing enough danger in his previous fight against Glenwood Brown. But Simon Brown also a junior middleweight moving up. So Otis Grant actually becomes the first full real middleweight that Bradley has faced in the last 4 fights. There is Grant, who is now starting to take the initiative.
Yeah, Grant really finding his range the last couple of rounds, landing with that straight left and that pesky right hook of his. See how Bradley carries that left hand low? He carries that left hand down by his waist. Well, you leave yourself open for a right hook. It's a right hook you don't see either, because you're not used to getting hit with that from a southpaw stance.
Grant looks to be more of the surer fighter in there.
Yeah, he is assertive, and that's something that he has been working on since the knockout loss to Quincy Taylor. He's trying not to step back.
Oh, the left hand attacks Bradley. Bradley has been down just once in his career, and he is hurt here on the fourth. And Otis Grant will be even more sure of himself here. Grant with 16 KOs in his 28 wins.
Look how wobbly the legs of Lonnie Bradley are. He can hardly stand up. He is walking on spaghetti legs. Wow.
One of the questions about Bradley, the ability to withstand pressure and punishment, is unknown. He really hasn't had to face it. He is facing it now, and early against Otis Grant.
Yeah, never really been hit before, Bradley.
Again, we're talking about Bradley, who is very cool in there, never presses, has not been pressed, working back, immediately going to the jab. And Bradley, in the fights we have seen him too, you know there's more there. You know, he has yet really let it go, let it fly. Haven't seen that explosion, and maybe Otis Grant will bring that out of him.
Yeah, and that's what they're asking for. Bobby Cassidy asking him, come out of your shell. You've seen Lonnie Bradley now. He looks as though he has been put back into his own little world there, just kind of going through the motions. His mind elsewhere. Really see it in his face too. He really needs to come up to another level now, Lonnie Bradley.
Bradley, when he was growing up in Harlem, was into football, mostly into basketball. He wanted to play hoops, go to college, eventually play in the NBA. He says, you know, you don't choose the sport chooses you. And he gravitated to boxing. Really didn't compete until he was 17. And he said he was mesmerized by the Sugar Ray Leonard Benitez fight back in 1979. And then by Pernell Whitaker when he won the gold medal in the 1984 Olympics. And that lured Bradley into boxing. Bobby Cassidy in his corner says great attribute for Lonnie Bradley is the fact that he is a terrific student, that he picks up very quickly in the gym. There he lands in the right hand, probably his best connection of the night.
Yeah, Bradley definitely picked it up this round. Bradley has had no other trainer as a pro besides Bobby Cassidy. His amateur trainer back when he was an amateur, 62-7, 25 KOs, was the other trainer in his corner, Ron Johnson.
for 12. WBO middleweight championship. The champ, Lonnie Bradley, giving up some early points to the challenger, Otis Grant, who was the #1 contender in not only the WBO, but also the WBC. Otis, this is his first fight in 8.5 months. Why the long layoff going back to June? Well, as the #1 contender in both divisions, he's been waiting for the title fight.
He's got it now, making the best of it. He's got Bradley rushing after him just when Otis Grant has won it. Stepping on the toe of the right foot of Otis Grant. And Grant stepping back and hitting Bradley. What you want to do a lot of times is step on your opponent and then hit him at the same time and he'll go down. Sometimes the referee don't see that you stepped on his toe.
But if you're still on his footing, they then just come right back up again. All right, a little more intensity from Bradley. Watch Bradley now on with a jab. Going to try to inch his way in a little bit. They feel, Bobby Cassidy, that he's just standing a little bit too far away to land that right hand. There he is, moving a little closer with the jab. But they continue to urge Lonnie Bradley to work. Got to remember, this is a world championship fight. Sometimes as a champion, when you're making that 5th, 6th defense, you start to take it for granted, lose sight of it, and it's the challenger, especially here, a challenger of equal talent, who has more of that motivational factor going for him.
Not just that, Al, it's his southpaw stance. I know it is. Lonnie Bradley is missing punches that he normally and ordinarily would hit a right-hander with. He could pinpoint those shots on a right-hander, but this backward stance of the southpaw fighter is giving Bradley all kinds of trouble. There's a good straight left from Grant. Bradley is now controlling the jab. Grant cannot allow for that to happen. Bradley gets that jab working. Everything else kind of falls in place. If your jab's working, your punching combinations, you set up your right hand.
Here comes that right hand of Lonnie Bradley. He's trying to find its spot here in the 6th.
He's got a good right hand, but he says his best punch is the left hook. And a lot of times you have to set up that left hook with the right hand. When you rotate your shoulders, punching combinations.
Question was posed to Lonnie Bradley, you taking a risk fighting a guy like Otis Grant here? And he says, he's my mandatory. What do you mean take a risk? Bradley thinks he is the best middleweight in the world. And this is what he wants to do, fight the best. I think Bernard Hopkins and William Joppy and Keith Holmes may have something to say about that.
Well, they would certainly welcome that fight. He says, I'm the better boxer and the better puncher in this fight. Bradley.
Work your way out. Come on, let him go.
Otis Grant says, in the ring, I have patience, because I've had several 10-rounders, but he cannot allow to sit around like in this round and freeze, allowing for Bradley to steal his vital rounds.
6 to go. USA's Tuesday night fights. Al Albert along with the champ, Sean O'Grady, watching a world title fight. The champion on the right, challenger on the left. And very close through 6 rounds. The best punch has been landed by the challenger, Otis Grant, wobbling Lonnie Bradley in the 4th round. But Grant, not known as a great finisher, he could hurt you, but that is part of his game that he has to work on. And in the Grant corner, he heard from Russ Amber after the 6th round, and Russ telling Otis Grant the time is now.
Otis, you're getting a little over anxious, reaching and getting your feet wide. Start putting the rhythm in where you're putting the forward pressure, okay? Start coming at it. Rhythm it in, rhythm it in. He throws, jump back, right back on it. Rhythm it in. Start turning up the heat a little. Okay? What round is this?
Russ Ambler sees Lonnie Bradley now applying more pressure, coming in. Otis Grant is better and more effective when his opponents advance. And what Amber wants is once Bradley comes into him, then you got to smack him, you got to hit him, let him run into something. That's what he did back in the 4th round when he staggered Bradley. It has been very much a seesaw bout. Grant came on strong early. Bradley came back in the second. He butted Grant in that 2nd round unintentionally. And then Grant came back in the 4th. Hit Bradley with the right.
Well, the unwritten rule is challenger has to come in and take the championship from the title holder.
And when Grant throws that 1-2, he can do that. He can take the championship belt from the title holder. But he can't allow for Lonnie Bradley to pick apart from the outside. Now look at the difference. Now Bradley the one backing up. That left hand hurt.
Well, if you've been watching this fight and you saw these two fighters, you didn't know who was the champ and who was the challenger, you would think Otis Grant in control. Right now, even more so, was the champion. Bradley has been tentative for the most part throughout.
Bradley is hurt, and this is the negativity on Grant. When he's got his opponent hurt, he really doesn't go into the kill. He should be all over Bradley right now.
10 seconds to go in the 7th. Another good round for Otis Grant. And we will pause for a word from your local cable systems. Number 8. And the champion may realize now he's losing a little bit of a grasp on that crown. Lonnie Bradley, undefeated in his 25 professional fights. The WBO middleweight champion with 4 successful defenses. The last one against former world champion Simon Brown. And right now getting the biggest test in his young pro career by Otis Grant. A fighter who comes out of Montreal, former NABF middleweight champion, the former Canadian middleweight champion. And about 4 or 5 years ago, the tender age of about, 24, Grant, who was then undefeated, actually had title offers to go up against then WBA champ Reggie Johnson and then WBC champion Julian Jackson, but he turned them both down because he had to finish and graduate from college. He went to Concordia University as a BA in Recreation and Leisure Services, and demonstrating then tremendous pressure, patience, and showing his priorities completely in order. And now he is finally getting that world title fight. 8 years into his pro career with a record of 28-1. The other time he was at the threshold, he was 1 fight away from a WBC shot. He was beating Quincy Taylor going into the 12th round and was caught and knocked out in the 12th. That is lone defeat. It came 3 years ago, and since that time, Grant has been undefeated in his last 6 fights.
And that is perhaps why he is so patient. All of a sudden now the crowd hears and sees what we hear and see, and that is that Otis Grant is hurting Lonnie Bradley, but he's not finishing. He's not closing the gap. He's not turning it up another notch.
Keep that right hand.
Lonnie Bradley, 19 knockouts in his 25 fights, but he's a quick starter. 12 of those have come in the first 2 rounds. So he is moving into a territory now where he does not own any knockouts. He has only 4 knockouts after the 5th, and none after the 8th.
Well, you really see a different Lonnie Bradley in this fight. He's been hurt on 2 occasions, and Grant has been tagging him.
Move into the final rounds. Lonnie Bradley, the champion, right now being pushed as far as he has in a championship fight, trying to make his 5th defense by the #1 contender, Otis Grant. Grant very confident in the ring. Lonnie Bradley searching. We talked about Grant and how he minimizes his mistakes. Bradley's finding that out. How he just controls the pace. Very economical in his style, and just waiting for Bradley to make the mistakes. And he has found the mistakes on several occasions.
Oh yeah, back in that 6th round, they really fired Bradley up from the corner, asking him for more pressure, and he gave more pressure. Not effective pressure, though, and he started running into punches. He got tagged in the 7th round from that, and now he's trying to set up his attack a little bit more this 9th round.
All right, what does this mean? You remember Bradley with the headbutt caught Otis Grant in the eye back in the 2nd round. Nothing has come of that. They've done a nice job with the end swell in the Grant corner, but Bobby Cassidy telling Lonnie Bradley now, after 8 rounds, start looking for the eye, work on the eye.
I promise, you are in that ring looking for desperation, anything that will give you an edge, anything that will knock your opponent out or hurt your opponent. And if that means going back to the well and going back to that eye to try to swell that eye up, swell that eye shut, you will go for it. You're looking for anything, any advantage whatsoever in the ring. Your opponent's trying to knock your head off.
The aggressor is the challenger, Otis Grant, the 29-year-old from Montreal. Clubbing right hand by Grant. Oh, Grant again with the right. Both fighters picking up the pace. We could have a dazzling finish in the final 4 rounds of this fight.
We have seen some wonderful explosions in the past from Bradley. Real fast hands, double combinations. We haven't seen those in this fight. Real fast, hard shots. Now he's looking for the one shot, the home run ball, and he cannot find it against the southpaw Grant. It has been Grant with the harder punches tonight. Three right hands from Bradley, not quite on the mark. Barely missing.
And for the most part, champion moving backwards. Higher and higher from Bobby Cassidy in the corner of Lonnie Bradley, telling him to take charge out there, start backing him up. You have 9 minutes to go, and yelling, work hard.
He sees what we see, and that is Bradley using his aggressiveness, but not real effective with it. He sees Grant landing the cleaner blows, the harder shots. And he also sees these rounds are very close. The old adage in boxing is that a challenger must take the title away from the champ. Bradley is the champion.
I don't know if this factors in. Lonnie Bradley now has an attorney who is working with him to negotiate the deals, but in a sense, he is now his manager.
Good left hook on the inside by Bradley.
So this is the first fight where Dave Wolf has not dealt with all the other ancillary problems, situations arising around the fight, and Lonnie Bradley has had to get involved with that. How much that takes off the mental approach for a fight.
It takes a lot off the mental approach. You have to depend on your manager to separate you from all the worry and the anger and the frustration of your career. That's what you have a manager for. Right now it's Grant managing Bradley in the ring, pushing him back to the ropes and scoring. This is where Bradley used to be at his best. When his back hit the ropes before, you'd see that explosion, and then you see the movement to slide down the ropes. You don't see that here. looking quite lethargic tonight. Bradley. And it's Grant applying the pressure. Bradley giving ground. You know, when Bradley gets hurt, he starts backing up. He starts stepping backwards. Oh, the best punch of the fight from Grant.
Oh.
And it's been that left hand all night.
Bradley on a couple occasions. Otis Grant, now you see him, now you don't.
Trying to steal the round is Bradley. He's leaving himself open. And his favorite weapon and has been the straight left.
Otis Grant looking very strong, looking very fresh. Bobby Cassidy now in the corner of Lonnie Bradley after that last round, now adding a new suggestion: knock him out.
Knock him out, you don't have to worry about the judges' scorecards.
Now keep in mind, Otis Grant, in his other crucial fight against Quincy Taylor, was winning on all cards going into the 12th, and he was caught there and knocked out. Grant has been down twice in his career. In that fight against Quincy Taylor, then a few fights later, Grant off of the Taylor fight, very tentative in his first few fights following that, and was knocked down in the 3rd round by Bo James before Grant came off the canvas and won that fight on a decision. Bradley has been down once, and that was 2 years ago, a flash knockdown in the 1st round against Apolinar Hernandez.
Yeah, a fighter that was strong and awkward, came at him all night. He says, Bradley says, I wasn't focused. You know, he fought David Mendez, Bradley did, and knocked him out in the 12th round, that back in May of 1995. So he does have power in the final round when he needs it. Not that he needed it in that Mendez fight.
Yes, I had missed that one earlier. Grant, the other end, has been KO'd and caught in the 12th.
Oh, there, oh, couple straight left. You see on the belt of Lonnie Bradley, the Grant name, that's the, not his opponent's name, that's the name of those trunks. Produced by Grant Sporting Goods.
And Grant going with the
Bradley
ringside endorsement.
The Bradley Sporting Goods trunks.
Actually, if Otis had bought the other trunks,
he should be wearing those.
Would not have had to pay for putting his name on.
Oh, I tell you, Otis Grant is a difficult fighter to face. And he is showing some great patience here in this 11th round.
All right, let's see what could be 3 minutes away of what he has been waiting for. The 29 professional fights. And Lonnie Bradley, a champion since May of '95. Has to have a feeling that something big has to happen for him in this 12th round to keep it. Bradley the champion, 25-0. Grant the challenger, 28-1. And Grant, you know, will be cautious. Whoa. He has to suspect that he's ahead going into the fight, as he was against Quincy Taylor going into the 12th and final round.
Yeah, but you can't suspect that in any fight, Al. This is a championship fight. And remember what I said earlier, the old adage in boxing is the challenger must take that title away from the champion. You can't leave anything to the judges. You have to go into a championship fight, and you have to fight every second of every 3-minute round.
But there's Taylor just tying him up inside, or rather Grant Tying up Bradley inside. He's not going to let him get off here in the 12th.
Yeah, looking for that straight left. That is a punch that has won him several rounds, I think, in this fight.
Bradley holding on. He just slipped a little bit, was off balance.
Yeah, I think Grant was stepping on his foot. Really a technical fight, but we have seen a different side of Lonnie Bradley tonight. Both corners urging their fighter to come on. They want pressure from both sides. Crowd split about half and half. Some chanting Otis, Otis, Otis. Other side chanting Bradley, Bradley, Bradley. Again, Bradley walking into it.
Bradley cocking the right. He has not been able to land a big punch in 12 rounds. And it's the final 10 seconds of the fight. And they let it fly to end it to the final bell. And that is it. Is it a changing of hands?
Side. Judge Chuck Giampa scores it 115-113 Grant. Judge Bill Graham scores it 115-113 Bradley. Judge Dale Grable scores it 114-114. This match is a draw, retaining the championship.
Celebrating
Lonnie
a draw.
Bradley.
He knew what the story was. And the crowd with the chorus of boos echoing our opinion here at ringside. Otis Grant can't believe it.
Look at the smile on Lonnie's face.
Oh, breathing a sigh of relief, and he knows it. A draw here in Vegas, and Otis Grant thought he'd be strapping on the belt, but Lonnie Bradley keeps it by the hair of his chinny chin chin. This certainly sets up a rematch. Not here, though. Next